Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present David Karasek from Zurich, Switzerland. David is a Swiss swimmer, not just any swimmer. He's a 10-time Swiss swimming champion. He also qualified for 2012 Summer Olympics in London. David is now on a mission to help team leaders in Zurich with 10 and more years of experience to land their dream role. He's also the co-author of a best-selling book, Forever Athlete. David teaches how elite performers show up as their best selves under pressure. He gives actionable tips and tricks, no fluff. David, please tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Hey, man. Hi, Peter. It's good to be here. Hi. Well, my story is, we just had a little chat before we went live, right? And it's also a lot of trial and error, a lot of trial and error. But basically, I had an course after I was done with swimming. I went into private banking for 5 years because that was the thing that I was, I didn't know what to do, basically. I asked my dad when I was younger. He's like, yeah, go in finance if you want to make money and all that. And I did, and it was fine for a while, but then, I fell on my ass a couple of times, I guess. And, I grew, as you were saying, right? I grew very unhappy. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And that's when I was like, I was, going out a lot and partying and trying to blow off the steam, but I was unhappy. And, it took a lot of courage to say, okay, I think I need help. And that's when I was like, okay, who do I want to ask? I want to ask somebody who's done that before me. And I try to find a coach, and I found one, and then we started working together, and that changed my life in such a short period of time. Like, I changed banks, went somewhere where I was happy. I made a lot more money. I had my own team, and things started to progress. And I was like, okay, I want to help other people do the same, because I was blown away by, how little I knew about it, even though, we always had coaches when I was a swimmer, but then, starting with a mindset coach about life, that just changed my whole perspective. And I was like, okay, I want to do that with other people. So that's how I got to where I am today.
Okay. A lot of people talks about how being like a very good sportsman is one of the best way to become really good business people or person. How would you said that you were like top of swimmers in Switzerland in your time. You even qualified for Olympics. But how did this transfer from sports into business influence you? What is the difference between goals that you have? For example, I'm because you have so many medals, and you know how hard it needs to, you needed to train to achieve all these medals. But how is with the goals in business? What's the difference in motivation? How you can achieve them? I would like you to explain to our listeners the difference between business and motivation in business and motivation in sports.
Yeah, man, it's a very good question, and I'm curious to hear your take on that as well. But one of the things that I've realized in my life when it comes to motivation is simply this. I found that we human beings, and I'm not sure why that is. I have some theories around it, but we think very linearly, right? It's just like a line. If it took me 5 years to accomplish that much, then we project, okay, it's going to take me another 5 years to accomplish that. So it's a linear progression. That's how we think. That's how we're wired. And then, when we're doing something, let's say somebody, hasn't done any sports, hasn't done any fitness stuff, right? And then they start to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, and they eat right, they sleep, they work out. Basically, they get a lot of results very quickly. Mm-hmm. And it's actually a curve that goes like this. It's very fast in the beginning, but then if you lift weights for like 2 or 3 years after that, like the progress is going to be marginal, right? And so you have the expectation of linear, but the actual results coming faster than you think. And that gives a lot of motivation, because it's like this amazing feeling, right? It's going better than I thought. And you see it. And in business and also like over a long sports career, it's actually, the expectation is still linear, But then how the results come is often exponential. So that means nothing happens, or just very little things happen for a while, and then they take off. But it's this gap where we think after a year or after 2 years we should be here, but we're still here taking baby steps. Where that's when we lose the motivation. That's when it's hard to keep the motivation, and then we don't have a long enough time horizon, and we lose the motivation, and we don't get to enjoy when that exponential curve kicks in. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been like a big, when I realized that, I was like, oh my God, it's like, it's the time frame that I have, you know, it's like, it's the time frame, it's that linear expectation. And the best things in life, they happen slowly in the beginning, and then all of a sudden that overnight success, right? It's not overnight success, and you know that.
That's great. I especially like it. It's you mentioned it with the sport, and it's the same with the diet. In the beginning, you lose a couple of kilos fast, or a couple of pounds fast, and then it's for extra pound you don't need extra week. You don't need maybe 2 months to lose, especially if you go with the man, if you go there to 12% body fat, or there if you want to go from 12 to 10%, it's hard, and from 10 to 8% is even harder. So I agree. What's your take on the difference or the play between motivation and discipline, and how important is to establish habits? Because for me, I have a huge motivation in the beginning, but then I have to be disciplined to come to the goal or to the end. And the only way to be disciplined for me is to establish a habit. That's something that I do every day, and that you said baby steps, and these baby steps will that are part of this habit will then initially on the end bring me to the goal. What's your take to how important is motivation? How important is discipline?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm 100% aligned with what you're saying, right? Because we can also, we can use motivation in the beginning. We can rely on willpower, you know, like we have willpower. The way, like a pretty cool way to explain it, I think, like, you know, if we really think about it, a lot of people resonate with that it's true, is like willpower. We just have a very limited amount every day, and it's kind of like a shitty cell phone battery. You know, if you have like one of the first iPhones and you still use it, let's say, right, you charge it overnight and then you use it, and then, you know, you can literally see how the battery drains. And I think that's what willpower is. We wake up in the morning, it's a fresh day, and then we have a limited amount of willpower that we can spend. And so, you know, and it drains really quickly. And that's why when people, for example, when they want to go to the gym, the easiest way to do it is just you get up in the morning and you go and do it. Because if you go through the day and you use your willpower to do other things, it's drained. And by the time you get home, you know, there'll be a reason, right? From the outside, we know it's an excuse, but like for the person, it feels like, oh, I have a reason not to go. And so it's not sustainable to rely on motivation and willpower, because as you say, it's not, you need to install habits, because if you have a habit, you don't, you know, it doesn't cost you any willpower, right? And you can use a willpower to install a new habit. It's just kind of trying to see like how we can explain like a habit in the best way. Like it doesn't take any willpower to watch our favorite TV show, right? Mm-hmm. It's like super easy. And like for me, I can safely say, for me, it's easier to go to the gym, for example, than watching TV. But that's just like because it's a habit, mm-hmm. right? And so that, I mean, what's your experience? How long does it take to build a new habit?
3 years.
Oh, that long?
No, to be something that is integral part of you only after 3 years. It's 3 to 4 months to really kick in, so that it's not something that you have to be motivated to do and start. That's
exactly. So then what we can do, right? We can use the motivation and the willpower to install the most important habit. And then once it's a habit, we don't need those resources because it's a habit. And then we can use the willpower and the motivation to build the next habit. And then, as you said, that compounds. And that's why you see those exponential, right? Because it builds. It's just like, interest, it compounds. And that's really, if we can play the long game, that's why it's so worth it.
Yeah. One thing that I really admire in you is that you were state champion 10 times. What is the motivation to be the state champion the second time? Because I understand the motivation to be state champion the first time, because you just want to be the state champion. What was your motivation to go and do it the second time and the third time? And then...
You want to know the honest answer?
Yes, please.
So I know this now. I didn't know it when I was actually doing it, but in the end of the day, it came down to making my dad proud. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe my mom also, but mostly my dad, because he was a swimmer. And you see, like, the interesting thing was also when I started out, when I was swimming, I was kind of a late starter. So I wasn't like super fast when I was younger, and my body developed quite late. But when I won my first Swiss, or let's say like when I started with a regional competition, you know, like a state kind of thing, not the country, but the state, you know, I was nervous and insecure about it. And then I won that. And then I went on to the Swiss level. I was even more nervous and felt even less good. And then I won that. And then it went on to European level, world champion, and then Olympics. And then funnily enough, when I made it all the way to the Olympics, that's when I felt the most insecure about myself. You know, it's something that, it's really strange, man. It just, that not good enough in me and having to prove my value through, you know, achieving a lot, it just never went away. And so that was my motivation, you know, in the end of the day, if I'm being honest.
Interesting. I would also like to ask you how it's in business, because we all know that the first million is important, and then we make this first million, and then what's the motivation for the second million? What's the motivation for the third million? How do you handle that? Where do you get motivation for business?
Yeah. I mean, look, for business, what I do with coaching, where I get my pleasure from, and I'm still working on that first million, right? To make $1 million in a year. I'm still like working on that. But where I get my pleasure is from working with people and passing on the, you know, the tips and tricks and the strategies that I've learned from other people who believed in me at the time when I didn't believe in myself, and then to pass that on to others. Because you know, there's one thing is like to develop skills, right? And skills are super important, obviously. But when you look at coaching, there's this, and a lot of people don't know that about performance coaching. There's the other thing is you give the person belief, because they may not believe in themselves at the time. And then it doesn't matter how many skills they develop, right? They may say, oh, I need to take leadership courses. I need to learn another programming language and all these skills. But if they don't believe that it's possible for them, you know, they're not going anywhere. And so in performance coaching, it's really also, it's about transferring the belief to the other person. And then you start to see that person open up and start to think bigger and envisioning a bigger and a better future for that person. And that's when it gets really interesting. And it's kind of like in sales, you know, when you're making a sale, right? You have a conviction. I mean, if you're selling something that you love, you have a conviction about the product or the service. And then your job as a sales is to transfer that conviction to the person that's sitting with you, right? And it's a little bit like that in coaching, because I know I've seen it. I've seen it in myself. I've seen it with hundreds of other people, that if you have a system that works, it's just like, well, do you believe that it'll work for you? And as long as you don't believe that it'll work for you, you're not going anywhere. And that can be very fast, right? Because skills could take a long time, as you know, right? It will take a long time to develop these skills, and then let alone master the skill. Would you agree?
Yes, 100%. I would also like to ask you something. When I was in Switzerland, I had huge support from community. So when we were in construction, the construction community would support me and would help me with suppliers and opportunities. And when we were in financing, the financing community would support me and give me different financing options. You said you were in private banking, so we worked with biggest bank. Then also the local bank knew about me, and they would, so this cantonal bank, they would support me also with LCs and similar stuff. And there was always someone that would introduce me to someone and help me. It was really supporting for me. How important is this local or community support for people nowadays?
Yeah, man, I think that's something that's very interesting that you mentioned that, because you obviously did something right, that people wanted to and chose to support you. Because honestly, when I speak to people who come from, let's say, America, right? Because America, their mindset is a bit different, and they'll come to Switzerland and tell me, oh, the people, everybody's just kind of with the blinders, just going like this, and it's very hard to break into like new groups and new communities. So if you had that experience, obviously I'm happy for you that you had it. But what I found, because I was in the States for 4 years for college and swimming, and I actually found they're doing a better job at integrating, immigrant. I mean, I wasn't an immigrant, but I was a student athlete there, like a foreign student athlete, right? And when you listen to what Arnold Schwarzenegger was saying when he got there, and the support that he got, and in Switzerland, I actually, it's getting better, but I don't know, it's like the Swiss culture is a tough one. So I'm surprised, but it's good for you, right, that you managed. And so the question would be to pass it back to you, right? It's like, how did you do it? Because I think that's very valuable.
I had really good mentors.
There you go. Okay.
So when I was first doing a business in Switzerland, before I moved to Switzerland in 2007, and the mentor immediately got organized everything for me, all the infrastructure. He said, okay, come here, we'll find you a place to stay. He found me a place to stay. I had a bit of a problem because they wouldn't sell a flat to me, but I was renting. That was not that much of a problem. But after then, they also showed me the flats where I could buy as a foreigner. And they introduced me to the whole community. So basically, I came to the in a community that was full of support and would help me with all my endeavors. And if I needed financing, I got immediately a meeting with the financing guy, and he said, okay, you can do this at that cost of money, you can do this. Then for construction, they introduced me to the Virgeld, to this community. So for me was everything was prepared, and my accountant was really supporting. He's still supporting. So if I need anything in Switzerland, she would help me. So the whole community was basically willing to support me to do business, and it was. And also then when we had problems in court, the lawyers, everyone would support me. I was really, I felt really welcome. I understand that people are not for a private life. It was not like that, because the Swiss people are more closed, and especially because of the immigrants, they're always suspicious. What's wrong with that? And I was acting maybe a bit too Americanized. The first thing that I did was purchase a Porsche and in and stuff like that. So it's not something that Swiss people are used to do. But as I said, I received a lot of support. I'm still really grateful for that experience.
Good. Yeah. And I mean, what you're saying, if you come in through someone else, right, through the goodwill and the credibility and the referral, right, of someone else, I think that's the way to go. And I mean, if you look at, because one of the things that we do is that we help people find a role that they really love, that doesn't, it pays them more and all that, but it's where their heart is at. And that, Zurich is perfect for that, because Zurich is big enough to matter, but it's a small city when you look at, it's like 500,000 people max, and it's so easy to meet the people, and the people know each other, right? And that's the way to go. It's like, well, you got to go out and network with people, but in a genuine way. It's networking. It's not net drinking or net sitting, right? It's networking, and you have to make an effort to, serve and be of value. And then once you have that relationship, then the game changes. I just meant like, coming in as a stranger into Switzerland without any connection. Some people struggle with that, but again, as you say, you just go out and make strategic connections and be genuinely interested in them, and then off you go.
And I remember there were a ton of networking events, in Zug, in Zurich, also in Bern, in Genf. There was tons of networking events, and I just went there and just got connections, and I could do anything. So for me, it was I was really introduced by my mentors, and that just paved the way for me. So it was, but everything was available. So the mistakes that I made were my mistakes. So
yeah,
if I could not seize the opportunity, was because of my personal problems and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's the way to go, right? Because in that moment when we can say, okay, it's me who's creating, you know, I'll look at the results. I mean, I do that too. I look at my results. If I don't like them, well, it's me. It's not everybody else. Because if it's everybody else, or if it's the circumstances, can I swear on the podcast?
Yes, of course.
Then I'm fucked, right? I'm fucked because there's nothing that I can do. But if I can say, okay, I take self-responsibility for that, and it's me who sucks, or who sucks too much for the result, you know, to have the result that I want, then, well, that's very empowering, because then I can change, and then my results will change, right? Otherwise, it's just, you know, and we end up with disappointment, frustration, and we're not going anywhere.
Okay. Because I see you as a superhero in Switzerland, I need to ask you about Andrew Tate. He has a Hustler University. Are you thinking of any project, or are you, or do you know any project, or are you part of any project like Hustler University for Switzerland? Because you already have all this network of successful people that you have them, or you have helped them put their life in place. Do you have any network organization in place, or you're planning to do something like that?
Not really. So Andrew Tate, right? I mean, I've seen like YouTube clips and all that, and you know, on some things I agree, on some I'm like, well, but you know, he's definitely a character. So, but no, I mean, what is that? Hustler University, or what did you say?
Yeah.
What is it about? I haven't heard of that.
He helps a lot of people, even very young people. So I'm not so fond of introducing too young people to business, because it's important to have like a teenager's life when you're a teenager, and not going into business when you're in your teens. However, I do believe that mentorship is important, and that there is a room for networking in Switzerland that could drastically improve, let's say, performance of everyone involved. I know one of my guests, Maxwell Ne, is a family office guy. I had interview with him also, and he has organized a London family office network, and now we can all, there are hundreds of members and members joining daily. Now we can all exchange our views, check how, for example, due diligence on different investments and all this stuff. You just go in a group and say, okay, does anyone have experience with this company or this investment opportunity? And they will explain you immediately. Go away, or yeah, it's genuine. I already have invested something and got some money back. We did a due diligence, go away, or we did a due diligence, is okay. So network like this is something that is extremely, how to say, convincing. And it's similar with David Piper. He does the same thing in Germany. For German high net worth individuals, he sources different opportunities for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, right? It's just like in coaching. I mean, we don't have something like formal, but obviously, like if you're in the industry, in the coaching industry, you know, like helping people create the results that they want, basically, is what it is. You get to see a lot of people and meet a lot of other people. And what I do is, like, you know, I got to be 100% sure that I can help a person. If I can't do that, but I'll know people who can help with that. And obviously I'll refer. And so, but it's informal, you know, it's like all through at the bottom of the table, you know, like it's not like something that is officially existing, but you know, it's like the ties behind the scene, right?
Yeah, I do similar, because my way of coaching people is more like a drill instructor, you know. So the people that would like a softer approach, they need to find a different mentor. And I often recommend someone that is more soft or agreeable if they need that. But if they need a drill instructor that can tell them, okay, this is not good, or give me 20, like 20 push-ups, then I can be the right guy for them. So this is important. That so you don't think that formalizing this would be an advantage for Swiss community?
I actually think it would. It's just like it's probably, it takes focus to build something like that, right? And then I mean, I mentioned I'm going to be a dad. I already think of myself being a dad, but our baby is coming in 2 months, and for me, like, it's a good opportunity to again do less and do what I'm best at and double down on that, because otherwise, I mean, I've had that so many times. As I said, learning through trial and error is like, just being spread thin and being involved in this and not being able to say no. And then, that sounds like a great idea, but it's, I don't know if I'm the guy right now to build something like that, right? Because I have
someone in your network that can do that.
Probably, yeah. Have to like reach out and do some research.
Yeah. So I imagine that you work with middle level and C-level executives mostly.
Yeah, that's right.
What is the trick to get their performance up? Usually the guys are well educated. They come from, let's say, good families. What is the trick? What is the thing that you help them most with to be more successful than they already are?
Yeah, man. Look, I think there's two very important points to that. The first one is that knowledge in itself doesn't mean we're going to have good results. There's a lot of people that know so much and they're the best study, they have all the studies in the world, but their results are mediocre at best, right? And there's other people, they're literally dumb as fuck and they're making billions. It's just, that's what it is. So knowledge in itself doesn't mean anything. So what's really important is the programming that the subconscious mind has, because there's different data on this, but like, imagine how I learn it is that the conscious mind works with 2,000 bits of data per second, which isn't very fast. And the subconscious mind, that regulates everything that you don't have to think about, works with not 400,000, not 400 million, but 400 billion bits of data per second. That's from, Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yes.
The meditation guy, right? So that's the numbers from him. There's other numbers, but what's the fact is that the conscious mind is like an ant pulling that way. And the subconscious mind, if it's not programmed in the same way, it's like a herd of elephants going the other way, right? And so, like, let me give you a practical example from sports. And if somebody wants to give a speech or has like, an investor meeting or whatever, they prepared a speech and they know consciously that they shouldn't be nervous and that there's no threat and that they're doing better when they're relaxed and that it can be present with the audience and all that. But then when the moment comes, the palms start to get sweaty, right? You start to sweat from here to here. You get hot. You start to lose stuff. You get nervous. That's because the subconscious mind is pulling in a different direction and you can't directly control that. And it's the same with athletes. They perform well in training. And then when the spotlight is on and the press is there, everybody's watching, they bomb it. And it's because the subconscious mind isn't programmed in the right way. And so I think that's really, that's really what it is, because the knowledge in itself, that's why people get so confused, because they get more and more knowledge, but it doesn't translate into results. And they look at other people and it's like, why is he so successful, right? I have the same knowledge, but they don't know that it's the subconscious mind that creates our reality. It's not the conscious mind. And so
if I understand correctly, it is extremely important that subconscious and conscious mind are somehow in tune.
Exactly. And that can only be done through repetition, because the subconscious mind only learns through repetition, right? Because every skill that you have acquired, like driving a car, let's say, right? In the beginning, you have to use your conscious mind to do all the movements, and then you do it many times, and then now we can drive a car, we can, we shouldn't be on a phone, but we could if we wanted to. We can have a conversation, and it's easy, right? But it's with repetition that the subconscious mind is reprogrammed, and just having information doesn't reprogram the subconscious mind. And that's where the trouble is. And I think that's where a lot of people get frustrated, because intellectually they get it, but the results don't show it, right? And then they give up.
So if I understand correctly, the best way to program subconscious is through repetition.
Yeah, it's through repetition, and it's to use your imagination, because the subconscious mind, it doesn't know the difference between something that's real and something that you vividly imagine. Like maybe what back in the days before swimming competition, I would visualize the race the night before when I was laying in bed, or even the week before, and I would vividly imagine it. All of a sudden my heart rate would start to go up, right? Because the subconscious mind didn't know if I was in a real race or not. And so you can use your imagination, but with repetition, like everyday repetition, to reprogram the subconscious mind.
Right, that's great insight. I would like to have your take on how important is emotional intelligence and how important is intuition for success in business.
Man, such a good question. I mean, how do we quantify on a scale 1 to 10? It's a 10, right? I mean, because when you look at intuition, I mean, and I'm curious to hear your point, right? When you look at intuition or creativity also, there's low levels of creativity and there's high level of creativity or intuition. Low level of creativity is when we try to imitate somebody else. We look at what somebody else is doing, we try to imitate it. And then as we go higher, we can imitate what they're doing and add our own spin to it, right? But it's still imitation. And then as you go higher and you look at genius level of creativity and intuition, well, where does it come from? How did Elon Musk dream up the Tesla? Mm-hmm. How did the guy who invented Starbucks, how did Steve Jobs invent the iPod and the iPhone, right? It's like it's coming from the inside, because by definition, it doesn't exist. It's new. And so that's intuition, right? And so it's like listening to your heart. And I think that's where the power is. When your heart and your mind are aligned, that's when you really start to build momentum. But you need the heart.
My biggest challenge was always that I can be creative under stress, but my intuition goes almost to zero when I'm under stress. That's my experience. So the best tool to develop the intuition is basically stress out. So go out. I go in a forest or horseback riding or something like that. That is my way to stress out, or just walk with a dog in forest. And then when I get the best intuitive ideas or solutions to problem that might seem that there's no resolution to them, but while I'm walking, I can somehow get that out. However, for creativity, it's often that I need to be under, let's say, time pressure, if not stress, that most creative ideas or solutions even come to mind.
Oh, that is very interesting. So what you're saying is that when it's about intuition, it's when you're relaxed out in nature. And I fully agree. I was just in Africa, man, 2 weeks on safari with my team. Oh my God. Leopards and lions and buffaloes and just out in the wild, no phone. And that's where my intuition was on. And you know what you're saying about creativity? That is so interesting. And I think it's so true, because one of the things that I tell my clients to do, this is really interesting for everybody to try, because I tried it and it freaking worked, because my coach made me. It's like when you're working 50, 60, 70 hours and you're like in the grind, it's like, okay, just allow yourself to only work 25 hours a week. And that is some form of stress, right? Because now oh shit, I have to get all this work done in only 25 hours. And if you stick to it, you will get creative and invent new ideas, create new ideas, new solutions, and get the work done faster, or even better, higher level of creativity, find a completely new way to not just do more of what you're already doing, but find something that has more leverage, like a partnership or, whatever, right? But I agree.
Optimization, automatization, and outsourcing. These are the three key words.
Oh, yeah. Agree. That's
So,
cool.
what do you think about ESG standard in financial industries?
Tell me what the what kind of standard?
ESG, so
I'll explain that to me.
ecological, social, and governance. That's also now you get an ESG score as a financial institution.
ESG.
Yes.
Oh man, I don't think like I'm qualified to really like talk about it.
Know,
I hear from people.
What's your as a coach? Do you believe that high level executives can be trained to act like a human being, or do you believe that they are more or less machines that they just care about the profit?
Yeah, I mean that I think that is the imprinting that we got, right? It's just like the generation. I mean, how old are you, Peter?
44.
Okay, so I'm 35, right? And I mean, you know, when I first started in private banking, for example, the guys that were older, the stories that they were telling was always like grinding. And now I see them, you know, they're high level executives now, you know, like with teams of 500, and they have their 5 weeks of vacation, but now they can buy more holidays. So that you'll see them go out, you know, not just have 5 weeks, they'll actually buy another 2 weeks or so. And, you know, they take sabbaticals or they reduce to 80%. I think that can change if they choose to, you know, and I think, you know, as us younger guys are moving into those positions, it will change. But, you know, I mean, my parents, I mean, they grew up with nothing, you know, there was war. My dad is Czech. And in the 60s, you know, I had to flee the country when the Russians came. And, you know, he had nothing and he suffered from hunger. He was actually relying on other people to give him food, you know, and that's like imprinting, you know, that really shapes how a person thinks. Or my mom, they were all, you know, 10 people in one house and they only had money to heat one room. And so her financial insecurity is totally different than mine, because where I grew up, I always had everything. I could go do all sports and travel. Food was never a problem. I had everything, right? So I'm like a flower child, if you want, right? And I think it's just like how we grew up and what we think is normal. And so I think it will change. It will change.
So you think that the next generation will be different just per se because of new perceptions and because of better life, and yes, they don't want to push people to such an extreme as the old generation, like baby boomers did?
Yes.
Okay.
I hope so.
No, you're a coach. You know executives because you're coaching them, so you already know. Yeah. I know that so I stopped my C-level position 4 years ago, and when I started in 2007, it was all work hard, play hard. So they would work 12 hours, 18 hours, even on a project. 12 hours was normal, but 18 hours was pushed to do when the deadlines were close. And so, and then they would go for a week to have a vacation. And so it was work hard, play hard. Right now, I sense that the generation behind us, or 40 and younger, they're more, work, private life balance and similar. So they're much more balanced than our generation was. And because I was not balanced, I experienced severe burnout. So it's...
What happened after the burnout for you? Like what was your realization that you had? Because I have never had that, so I'm just curious, you know.
First 5 or 6 years before I realized that I was in burnout, I was in complete denial. Yeah, it's okay. I just need to work harder. And I was basically looking. I wanted to escape something. I don't know what I was escaping from. And then I was a sportsman before, so I trained a lot, like 7 times a week and similar. And then I became fat, and I did sports like 3-4 times a week also, but I had 120 kilos. And because I was lifting weights, it's not so obvious that you're fat. Because you can still lift like heavy loads, but
still look good with the big plates.
Yeah. I was in denial of that also. So then I read a lot of neuroscience, and I started with strict diet, prolonged fasting, and keto diet. And then I started training weights again. And I started kickboxing again recently, because that was my go-to sport. But I needed like 3 years to get in shape, so that I'm like at 12%-ish body fat. So, and before I was 20+%. And said,
like
okay,
real heavyweight.
Yeah, I was 120 kilos. It's
yeah.
Now I'm 92. So for me, it was this mind and body cognition. So I needed to go in both ways. Like they say, healthy mind and healthy body. It was really important for me.
Yeah.
And prolonged fasting helped me a lot, and all this cleaning and stuff like that. So I really recommend that to anyone who has a lack of motivation to try that.
Yeah, man. I'm with you. And you know, it's like what you're saying is like with the body, you can lead with your mind, but you can also lead with the body, right? Like, for example, you can just, I mean, a simple thing that I love doing in the winter. In the summer, it's kind of boring because the water isn't cold enough. But in the winter, we have like, you know, rivers and the Lake Zurich out there. And I actually, you know, I even, if there's a new client that wants to work with me, I will not start working with him or her until we jumped in the lake together. And that, it's already something they've never done, and it kind of shocks you. It's this short-term stress, and we're made for that, right? We're made for that, and you get out of it, and it's like, holy shit, I feel great. And you can lead with the body. It can lead with the body, and it's
100%.
easy.
And the when you're shivering from cold, you're releasing stress from your body. That's Wim Hof's theory. So I really like doing that. I also go in the rivers during the winter, and for me that is one of the best stress release.
It's great, right?
However, you have to be careful that someone is not that does not have problems with the heart or something like that, because this could be the end for them. But if they're normally healthy, that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I agree. You know how I use it? So like, this is going to sound funny coming from an athlete, but you know, like sometimes, I mean, I go out, right? And sometimes we drink, and I usually don't get hangovers, but every now and then, sometimes I get one. And what I do, I just jump in the river, because I'm not afraid to, you know, drown, because I can swim, right? And I get out, and it's freaking gone, like completely gone. You know, it's just a reset, like boom, like that.
Because body has to get rid of all the toxins. Because of stress.
Exactly. And that stress that we're talking about now, it's a short-term stress, and we're made for this. Just like working out hard, you know, do a high intensity workout, lifting weights, like doing kickboxing. Actually, I do MMA, and my you know, future wife, my fiance, she was a professional MMA fighter. Okay. And that's short-term stress, right? Get the cardio up, get the sweat going. We're made for this. And actually, there's so many things that happen on a cellular level, how, you know, the telomeres, they look crazy, but it's very different than the toxic stress when we're always going, you know, like with in the car, right? When you're talking about the Porsche, when you're always at 8,000, that will burn you.
Yes.
But the short-term stress is stress, recover, stress, recover. That's what an athlete does, right? You hard workout, you recover. Hard workout, you recover.
Okay, thank you for all these insights. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to take from this interview? Any quick tips or trade secrets that you can share with us?
Trade secrets. I haven't thought about that. But if the one thing that I would love to share, hey, yeah, I mean, look, we talked about you being a drill sergeant, right? And so it's actually funny that you say that. I wouldn't think of myself as a drill sergeant. Well, you know, but what the number one value that I've received from my coach to take on board is the truth. To go for the truth, you know, and what that requires is honesty, and especially with oneself, right? For me, that means to be honest with myself about what's going on and look at my results. And if I'm not happy, then take responsibility, change it. And then also when you're working with someone, or when I'm working with my coach, I always say, David, I love you, but can I give you the truth, right? And then he'll give me the truth. And the truth, it may feel very confronting to me because it makes me maybe not good enough, that I did something wrong, that I don't understand something, whatever. But it's just information. But the information, is useful if I can take it on board without being hurt, right? And so, because the saying, like, the truth will set you free.
Yes.
But then we always add, but first it may bitch slap you, right? Yep. But the truth, and just to be, if you're not happy with how it's going and you feel like you're behind, or someone is behind, and then just take responsibility for that and be open, because that's when the learning and that, the happiness, the flow, the momentum, all of that, it'll start to come, right? But it's that moment when you decide, I want to change. And so, it's for everybody to decide when that level. Some people, man, their level to change their body, for example, is when they're freaking 500 pounds, when they're 250 kilos. For others, when they go to 8% body fat, they're like, oh, I'm fat, I got to do something. It's different. But, question is, what is it for you, right? What is it for me? What is it for everybody else? And that's very important to think about, I reckon.
Yeah. Thank you for all these insights. I will put links to your pages and social media in the description. And thank you, David, for being my guest tonight.
Thank you, Peter. And I'm happy to, share that all across social media as well.